What is happening, people? Welcome to my F1 channel. Welcome to Peter on Pole. My name is Peter, in pole position in the lead up to Drive to Survive Season 3. I've been going through every single episode starting from Season 1. And right now we're in Season 2, Episode 2, Boiling Point. My expectations were what happened with Haas in that pit stop from Australia with the title Boiling Point. It kind of ended, the first episode sort of ended with that pit stop issue. And so I was like, listen, we need to find out what on earth went wrong in that pit stop. It can't have happened again. And guess what? We didn't get nothing about that pit stop. Do you know why? Because there was some bigger fish to fry. Honestly, the issue with Haas, man, this was bad. This episode was very, very, very sad. Like I said in the first episode, there were so many different stories going on. There was about 8 different stories. I was exaggerating there. This one now is focused solely on Haas. So it was all about them. It was about the team. It was about Guenther Steiner. It was about Gene Haas and their new title sponsor, Rich Energy, Will Storey. The direction of this episode seemed to be more so about Haas's downturn. It starts off very positively. It starts off very strong, but very quickly into the episode, it is just going downhill from then on. Before we move into that sort of area, you get an in-depth analysis on Haas, the team. You get a situation about, you get the story, let's say, of how Will Storey and Haas sort of got together. Will Storey owns the energy drink company Rich Energy, which is like a rival sort of, a competitor of theirs would be somebody like Red Bull, who also do energy drinks. So this was kind of cool. Like you could see potentially, now we've got 2 energy drinks in the scene. It seems like this is going to be quite an interesting story. We get to the car launch, which happens in London, inside this like wonderful building. It was in deep central London. And then they open up the car launch there, black and gold. It was quite an astonishing car launch. I loved it. I liked the car launch. It was really, really cool. It was really good. It was classy, but it was like, it was just so strange. It was strange, actually. It was just strange. When you look at even like the way Will Storey's sort of dresses and the way he is, massive long beard, funny guy. Like when you speak, he's a proper British guy, talks funny like I was expecting. I don't know why I thought he was American. Like his accent I just thought was American for some strange reason. But no, British guy. And yeah, he related to the team a little bit because he was like, Haas is like the underdog. It's the David in the Goliath situation in Formula One. And that's how I see my company. We are a young company trying to come up and really expand and join the party with the Red Bulls and Monsters, for example. But yeah, as I said, the mood goes down very, very quickly. And so you're getting this tone of this is not going to be a great story. Will it have a happy ending? It's yet to be seen. But it was quite, the direction that they went with was more, I think, to do with more in-depth. Let's get into the team a bit more. Let's get more of the relationship that's going on. And boy, did we get that. What I like about this episode is that you get a more in-depth sort of working relationship between Gene Haas and Guenther Steiner. And you really start to see a little bit where the pressure comes from with Guenther Steiner, the reason why he acts the way he does. Because he's the team principal of Haas, he's under so much pressure from his owner. And we actually get a bit more of a human side. Not that it wasn't human before, but I did actually start to feel sorry for him. Because in the beginning I was like, look, this guy's leadership skills, again, I made in my notes, I was like, man, this guy's leadership skills yet again are more so, they're going to cost the team, if anything. But watching the episode, I'm a bit more like, do you know what? He was under so much pressure from an owner who, the first 3 years Haas were in F1, they did very well. And this is, I'm going ahead a bit here, but Guenther Steiner's talking to his wife and sort of opens up to his wife that, we've had 3 good years. We're having a bad year right now. And he's like, he's always expecting more. It's never enough. He always wants more and more. And you're talking about a Haas team that's new to Formula One. They should sort of be a bit more humble and the expectations should be sort of, they need to be realistic, if that makes sense. I had the same problem as well with Will Storey, a guy who I liked at the beginning of the episode, who I thought this is great fun. He's great entertainment. And the shock, of course, is Rich Energy leaves Haas midway in the season because the season's not going so well. And it was, he mentioned they had this harsh tweet that came out, we're parting ways with Haas sort of immediately, because we expected to be aiming to beat Red Bull. However, we were behind Williams in Austria. And it was just like, guys, like, I get it. It's been a bad year. I'm not even excusing it. It's been a terrible year for Haas. But it was so odd that you just see the CEO of Rich Energy, and then you got the owner of Haas, and you just see where their expectations were. Yes, okay, they've poured in money. I understand why they have the expectations they do. But at the same time, it's either these guys were not very well educated in Formula One and how it kind of works, but their expectations were incredibly high. And I feel like with the team, they mentioned in the first season, Haas was a team that was expected to do a lot with very little. So, and it was that thing of, they've been doing a cracking great job. And so this idea that, I'm leaving, sort of, Will Storey, sort of throws his toys out the pram. And that's where he gets that kind of bad reputation in Formula One, because it's like, I guess it's just the expectations of the owner. And I don't know whether it's just a bad stereotype of a rich person, but expecting, oh, look, I've poured money into this, so where's the success? But, it doesn't necessarily always work like that in Formula One. Ferrari, even to this day, Ferrari spend the most amount of money on their car season on, season out. They've not won a championship since 2007. So, honestly, it blows my mind. It blew my mind in the episode, the way they were talking. Because even Gene Haas as well, towards the end of the episode, was very much like, if we're finishing in 9th in terms of the constructors, if we're in 9th place, I don't know if I want to be doing this anymore. And it was like, okay, guys, they're having a bad, 6 months or, a bad season, which I could forgive, because Haas are brand new. They've just come into Formula One. 3 years. They've got 4 years on so far in this season, 3.5 years, let's say, as this season goes on. And they finished very well in the constructors 3 years in a row. So it was just baffling and odd. I didn't quite understand it. Why? And I guess whether that was where Netflix wanted to take us, whether they wanted to make us see be more sympathetic to Guenther and the drivers, or whether, and to see the owners in a certain light, because they weren't portrayed that well. What was interesting after that race I think it was in Austria, where it was just like, this has been a terrible, terrible time. Magnussen goes back to his home in Denmark, and he's with sort of family, friends. They're on a boat out to sea, just, a sort of recovery, relax, restoration sort of thing, recreational sort of stuff. And, you get Magnussen talking about himself where, look, everybody knows the car is the problem. It's not the drivers this time, thankfully. But at this round, he sort of starts questioning himself and wondering whether or not he is good enough anymore. Because he said he has some self-doubt. And this is another guy who, again, he's a youngish driver in Formula One, and he's done brilliantly since he's been here. But, because of the self-doubt, he just felt very I don't know if he felt tired and exhausted, and whether he was just thinking a lot, but he was getting in his own head. And yet this is a man who's confident. He's like I said, he doesn't stop at anything. He'll do whatever it takes. So I think maybe because he's pushing the hell out of the car and it's still not getting the results that they require, maybe he's doubting, maybe it's me, maybe it's my own performance. And that was quite of a surprise and something that I liked, because we got to see another side of Magnussen that we don't ever really associate him with. With that, a couple of things did surprise me. I mean, Will Storey's beard. You thought I was just going to mention him and not mention the beard. I mean, that thing was a 6-foot sub. As well, Guenther Steiner opening up to his wife. I mean, of course you would expect you'd open up to your wife, but I guess having it on camera, and you could tell it was a bit more, maybe it was a bit more genuine or emotional, because they were speaking in their language, I think in German, and it was a bit more, I guess it's easier to express yourself, whereas in English, probably when it's your second language, you don't really know as such how well to do it, unless you're very well versed in the language. But it was good to just sort of see that, the fact that they got footage of them. I don't know if it was their home, it was in Italy, and yet they were speaking German when they were out in the street markets and stuff like that, which was interesting. So I don't know whether it's just a case of, because that part of Italy may be closer to the Alps, maybe it's closer to the German side or whatever, I don't know. But or, you know, Switzerland, whatever, Austria. But yeah, it was one of those where it was just good to see this heartfelt side of Guenther, because then you could really be invested in him. You could really feel for him. Whereas in the first season, it was a case of like, you know, he was just a character. He was just like, you know, effing and blinding and blah blah, a few jokes here and there, always taking the mick out of Roman. But when you get to see the human side of any human being, you then do feel for them. You do start to like I say, invest in them a little bit more. Rich Energy, they surprised me in this because of how they left. And yeah, I get it, you know, they weren't performing well, Haas, they weren't performing well, but nonetheless, it's your first year, you've just come in, you know, give the team some time, give them something. At the end of the day, it's not a Formula One manufacturing team. It's not a team that, you know, it's not like a Mercedes or a Ferrari, cars that you know of, and then they come and build a car together, an F1 car. It's more, they're having to pick pieces out from everywhere, you know, using any loose ends from different teams and different manufacturers and try and piece the car together. And it's what, you know, they're a small team compared to the rest, and yet they were fighting in that midfield right in there, you know. And yes, they've had a bad season, but man, that was just, it was just weird how they left, the tweet that they came with, you know, and it was just like, wow, that's quite aggressive. As well, what I will say that surprised me, Haas end up going back to their first spec, the old spec car from Australia, because that had a good result. And we're all the way in the British Grand Prix. I mean, we are far into the season now, and nobody ever does that in Formula One. When you start your car at the first race of the season, your car improves time over time, you get more upgrades, you improve the spec of the car. But what was happening with Haas's performance is the pace was getting worse and worse and worse. Grosjean says in the clip that when I'm out on my own, the car is fine, it works brilliantly. When I get in a place full of cars and whatever else, all of a sudden the car just, it does not handle well. It's slow as heck. And, you know, finishing near the back of the grid, we're talking like just ahead of Williams. So it's incredible how they went back to the very old car. But to be fair, they had no choice. They had nothing else to do but to try that and see what would work. And so, you know, you have that scenario. A few things that I didn't like, and this is not necessarily a Netflix thing. I'm not, you know, it's not a criticising on them. I'm actually talking about in the episode what I didn't like, what was going on. Haas being ninth in the championship was just not right. I mean, it seems normal now in 2021, but it was not right when you consider the come up they had. Then you have, of course, the managers, you know, the owners, sorry, one of Will Storey and Gene Haas. I keep saying it, but yeah, it's just the way that they were, the way that they're, you know, I like the way that they portrayed them, because I guess they were just trying to be, they were showing really who they were, but I was just not a fan of the way that they behaved, and it was just odd from them. And of course, the two drivers attacking each other. In Silverstone, you get a situation where both Grosjean and Magnussen hit each other. They get a puncher for both cars. Both cars have to retire, which is just, it is just a horrible, horrible day. They get into, you know, Guenther Steiner gets in there and is wilding out. He is furious. You know, he's telling them basically about themselves. He's just saying, like, I'll drop both of you. I don't give a damn, sort of thing. And of all races for this to happen, it's this one, because they needed to have to see the difference between the old car and the new car. So one of them, I think it was Grosjean, drove the old car, the old spec, and Magnussen on the new one. So at least if they had both cars finished, you can look at the data, compare it. And then they had no data whatsoever to fall back on. And that's what makes it even worse, is because you're slowing the progression of the car. And man, it was, you know, even if I was Guenther, I was with him on this one. You know, he was just screwing at these guys. And then Magnussen leaves and smashes the door, like the office door. And I was like, oh dear, you know, this was not good at all. The team harmony was just wretched. And Guenther Steiner was losing the plot. He was like, listen, if he wants to come and do that, tell him I don't need him to come back. You know, I'll find another driver. And the pressure, like, Boiling Point is a great title, because the pressure was just intensifying and intensifying and intensifying. And just when I thought Boiling Point was referring to the fact that the pit stop was a mare again in Australia, they didn't even touch that. They did not even go anywhere near it. This time around, it was all about the season, and the season was so much worse than last season. And yet you look at last season's Haas, you know, we were sitting there like, oh my God, what a, you know, pun intended, what a car crash. But you know, this time round, it was just like the drivers weren't necessarily at fault, except for this one moment in Silverstone. But just as a whole, man, there were so many things going on. It was a team that did not need the stress, you know, and it was stress that could have easily been avoided, I think. So how did I feel? Like I said at the beginning, I was questioning Guenther's leadership. I still question it, don't get me wrong, but I understand a bit more as to why he is the way he is, because of the pressure he's got above him. You know, when he opens to his wife, I felt for him in that moment where, you know, we've finished well 3 years in a row, but it's never enough. We have to do more and more and more. Even when they have, there's a scene where Gene and Guenther have a little, like, they're sitting in their sort of, what do they call it? It's like their little hospitality area at the race weekend, and having like cappuccino or whatever. And you can sort of see, like, you know, you see Guenther Steiner very vulnerable in terms of, like, he just feels like he wants to just get out of there. He just wants to finish the coffee and get out of there. But, you know, Gene is very much like, he sort of sets this precedent of, well, you know, let's hope we do better. You know, the team is running like rubbish. And it's just like, it's so awkward, it's so tense, and it's just, the last thing they need is any stress on their back. They could just do with, like, just leave me alone for a bit, let us work things out, and we'll get the team together again. But yeah, it left me feeling sad. It was a great episode, but it left me feeling sad. I'm gonna give it like a 9 out of 10, like an 8.5, 9 out of 10, because, you know, I saw so much more information than I originally thought I would see. I love the in-depth, going in depth more with the Haas team, more than what we got before. Before it was more comedy and entertainment, but this time around it was more heartfelt. It was a bit more, we got a bit more knowledge behind everything. You felt sorry for the team, you know. It kind of pulled at the heartstrings a little bit, because it was a bit like, give these lot a break, give Guenther a break, you know, give Grosjean and Magnussen, give them all a break. You know, they need something to go well for them this year, but it turns out to be a horrible year. They're finishing just ahead of the Williams. And yeah, the boiling point for Will Storey was, once they finished behind them in Austria, that was it. He packed his bags and left. And so you feel sorry for them, because they're losing out on money as well. So what the heck do they do from now on remains to be seen. But that was my thoughts on this episode, Boiling Point. Yeah, 8.5 to 9 out of 10. Somewhere in the middle there. 8.75. Let's do that way. Yeah, out of 10. Great episode though, nonetheless. It was quite in depth. It was really, really good. And, you know, Netflix seemed to improve it. They're improving on these episodes, you know, a bit more. And I guess they looked at, you know, what could they improve on from last season, even though last season was brilliant. It looks like this is going to be a great ride for the rest of the season. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about Haas in this season, what you thought about Haas in this episode, what you thought about the different characters. What did you think Netflix were trying to do? How did you feel like they went? What did you like? What didn't you like? If you like the video, please like the video. And if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel as well. We move on to episode 3. Remember, we're on a mission all the way to Drive to Survive season 3, which at the time of recording is not out, but is coming out very, very, very shortly. And so we'll be going through every single episode, every single season. With that said, people, lights out.